how much of these things do you actually need in order to increase your happiness, live life to the fullest, and have a good time today and know that you're doing the right things moving forward. And it all gets answered first by just kind of thinking to yourself right now what matters. How much is enough? So there's so many different things you can apply this question to. How much is enough for you to be happy and comfortable today? How much is enough for you to own in the house that you end up purchasing, or maybe you're renting? And how much space do you need? How much do you need for retirement? There's so many different ways you can slice and dice this, but the cool thing is it can all be drilled back down into just talking through what actually matters to you. Where do you get the most value out of things? So that's a today question. What things are important? What things matter? And then it gets really easy. So you're able to kind of back into, well, if these are the things that matter and these are the costs and things associated with that, well, how much money do you need to make in order to fund that? But then once you know that you're making more than that, you can start applying it towards some of your future goals and making it easier on yourself down the line. Once you get that figured out, how much you need today, then you know everything additionally could be saved for future goals to help kind of fund how much is enough for these different items down the line. Once you go through this process, it's kind of like strengthening a muscle where, yeah, it's painful to kind of sit down, take the time and get intentional and focused on the things that actually matter to you, the things that are going to be moving the needle as far as your happiness and just kind of comfort and confidence as far as what you're doing. But once you get these things in place, you're able to apply them to the future. So this isn't what most people do, but the biggest thing is just making sure you don't do what everyone else does, which is just wing it, make stuff up, and rely heavily on what their friends and family, social media is telling them they should be doing. So that's a huge issue as far as how people think about spending their money and think about things being enough for them. Well, you might be happy one day with a certain car or a certain house, and then you see someone else has something and it's different than yours, it's newer than yours, and you're like, well, that looks pretty nice. Well, does it actually matter to you? How big of a bump in your happiness is it going to make if you actually make those same types of decisions? You might get a boost just in the short term, but over the long term, it's not really going to matter on a lot of these things. So it's important to think for yourself, become intentional, clear on the things that you value, and then you're able to apply it to the future. So it's very interesting, but the life that you live now and the life that you kind of start to build for yourself throughout your career, that's going to be very indicative of how much you actually need for retirement to live off of and kind of have a good life. Obviously, there's certain goals too that might be special and unique where sometimes people will do like a around the world trip or just some special intense trip the first few years of retirement. Well, that's not your normal life. That's something that would be an additional, kind of like an add-on to retirement, your normal retirement expenses. And it's still easy to back into those things once you're talking about them, once you're thinking about them, not only the things you value today, but the things that you could value as you move into the future, and think about those cool, exciting goals that you want to start planning for and being more intentional about the things that add value to your life. But once you get those things, it's very easy to find the numbers. How much is enough? How much do you actually need if 20 years from now you want to do X, Y, and Z and retire? Well, once we know that, we can actually back into, well, how much money do you need? We can also back into how much money should you be saving? How much should we be expecting as far as the return on your investments in order to make these goals have a high probability that you're actually going to be able to do the things that you want to do? So when it comes to how much is enough, you first have to think about that for yourself and get very focused and detailed as far as what actually matters to you, the things that are going to actually move the needle. Sometimes it's trial and error. You won't know certain things until you actually do it, but that's kind of the default for most people. And there's a lot of things you might know in advance before making these decisions just by thinking about them, not being quick to jump in and do stuff just because you see other people doing those types of things. And so I think that will help you go a long way in terms of finding out how much is enough for you today, how much is enough for you for these different items, like how much income you need, how much travel, how big of a house, how much a living space, how big your family should be, how how long until you want to keep working, how long till you retire, what types of awesome things you're going to do between now and then and during that time period too, and how much of these things do you actually need in order to increase your happiness, live life to the fullest, and have a good time today, and know that you're doing the right things moving forward. And it all gets answered first by just kind of thinking to yourself right now what matters, what's going to add value, and slowing down your kind of decision making process. Like, you don't have to commit to something just because you can get it sooner, because fast isn't always the best thing. You want to make sure that you make smart decisions, not just fast decisions that you could possibly learn from, but sometimes making mistakes, it's hard to overcome them, regardless of your age, regardless of the time situated. Obviously, there's always ways to recover, but it's still painful when you make them. So I always favor avoiding mistakes rather than trying to learn from mistakes. Obviously, if mistakes happen and they're inevitable, you still want to learn from them if that's the case. But ultimately, you just want to make sure that you live the best life you can and try to avoid mistakes if you can too.